Okay, today is the 7th of September. Before I proceed with the suttas, I'd just like to refresh your memory on this Sarakani Sutta. I forgot to mention one or two things that are important, or I forgot to stress. So we look at this Sarakani Sutta 55.24 on page 1811. Now, in this sutta, the Sarakani, this layman, he died, and the Buddha said that he was a stream enterer. And a lot of people did not believe because they said that he did not keep the 5 precepts. Actually, one of the 5 precepts, because he drank liquor. But the Buddha did not say that because of drinking liquor there was anything wrong. The Buddha just said that he had gone for refuge for a long time to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. In other words, he had learned the Dhamma for a long time, so how can he be reborn in the woeful planes of existence? So now, to be a Sotapanna, stream enterer, as part of first fruit, Arya, that person, sometimes is said to have perfect sila, sometimes said to have Aryan sila, or said to have the sila, moral conduct, dear to the noble ones, to the Aryans. Now what is this Aryan sila? Aryan sila in the Noble Eightfold Path consists of 3 factors: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Right speech consists of 4 precepts, not to lie, not to engage in malicious or divisive speech, not to engage in coarse or vulgar speech, and not to engage in idle gossip. So there are 4 precepts in right speech. In right action, there are 3 precepts: not to kill, not to take what is not given, and not to engage in sexual misconduct or adultery. 3 precepts. Right livelihood means earning your livelihood in a way that does not harm others. And that is covered by the 7 precepts, right speech and right action, so you don't harm others. So these 3 things, these 3 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the Sila component, the Sila component of the Noble Eightfold Path, consists of 7 precepts. And these 7 precepts, you notice, there is no precept against liquor. In other words, there are some people, they are good Buddhists, but every evening after dinner, they like to drink a bit of wine. Especially Westerners in the country, it's very cold. In the West, the winter, they need a bit of wine. There's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes, the precept is to prevent us from becoming intoxicated to the extent that you lose control of yourself. But if you don't lose your control of yourself, it's quite okay. But sometimes some people, they don't see it that way. I've been told there are some monks on the internet, they say even you drink 1 drop of liquor, you have broken the precept. That's a bit too extreme. The other thing I think I've mentioned the other day, but I just like to stress again, that if you notice on page 1812, it says that the Arahant, the one who is liberated by mind or liberated by wisdom, he has joyous wisdom, swift wisdom. And then the Anagamin also has joyous wisdom and swift wisdom. But the Sakadagamin does not have joyous wisdom or swift wisdom. And the Sotapanna also does not have joyous wisdom and swift wisdom. So, why is it that the Anagamin and the Arahant, both of them have joyous and swift wisdom, whereas Sakadagamin and Sotapanna do not have? Now, in the suttas, it is mentioned that the Sotapanna and Sakadagamin, they have perfect sila or Aryan sila, whereas the Anagamin has perfect sila and perfect samadhi, perfect moral conduct and perfect concentration. And the Arahant has perfect sila, samadhi and panya, perfect moral conduct, perfect concentration, perfect wisdom. So the Anagamin and Arahant, they both possess one thing in common, which is perfect concentration. Perfect concentration in the Noble Eightfold Path means the 4 jhanas, nothing short of the 4 jhanas. If you have 3 jhanas also, it's not perfect concentration. It is concentration, but it's not perfect concentration. So that is why the Anagamin and the Arahant, they are one step higher than the Sakadagamin and Sotapanna in the sense that they have deep wisdom. Joyous wisdom and swift wisdom refers to deep wisdom, and deep wisdom comes with deep samadhi. So that's why it is stated in the suttas that concentration brings you great wisdom. So there's something that the people who practice pure vipassana, they don't believe. So without perfect concentration, if you practice pure vipassana, it is not possible to attain joyous wisdom and swift wisdom, in other words, deep wisdom. So the last and most important thing about this sutta is that the Buddha said even the trees can become Sotapanna if they can understand the Dhamma, meaning that Sotapanna is to be attained by listening to the Dhamma, not just meditation. Although meditation does help, does assist, but the most important criterion for attaining stream entry is hearing the Dhamma, because there is one sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 9.20, where it is said that the Sotapanna, or it's implied that the Sotapanna has right view. Right view. And in fact, all Aryans have right view. So, right view is obtained with 2 conditions, as mentioned in the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta 43. One is the voice of another, in other words, somebody else teaching you the Dhamma, and then you have Yoniso Manasikara, which can be translated as proper attention or careful attention. So, right view comes from somebody else teaching you the Dhamma. So nowadays that would include reading the Nikayas, the original suttas of the Buddha in the book form. So very important thing to remember, that if you want to attain Sotapanna, you must listen to the Dhamma, otherwise you can never attain right view and become Sotapanna. Okay, now we proceed with the sutta 55.54. That's on page 1834. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Sakyans at Kapilavatu in the Grodha's park. On that occasion, a number of monks were making a robe for the Blessed One, thinking, after 3 months with his robe completed, the Blessed One will set out on tour. Mahanama, the Sakyan, heard. A number of monks, it is said, are making a robe for the Blessed One, thinking that after the 3 months with his robe completed, the Blessed One will set out on tour. Then Mahanama, the Sakyan, approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, I heard that a number of monks are making a robe for the Blessed One, thinking that after the 3 months with his robe completed, the Blessed One will set out on tour. Now I have not heard and learned in the presence of the Blessed One how a wise lay follower who is sick, afflicted and gravely ill should be exhorted by another wise lay follower. Let's stop here for a moment. So here Mahanama is asking, if a good Buddhist is dying, how should another lay Buddhist advise him? This is something you ought to know in case one of your Buddhist friends is passing away. And the Buddha said, a wise lay follower, Mahanama, who is sick, afflicted and gravely ill, should be consoled by another wise lay follower with 4 consolations. Let the Venerable One be consoled. You have confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus. The Blessed One is a teacher of devas and humans. Enlighten the Blessed One. You have confirmed confidence in the Dhamma. You have confirmed confidence in the Sangha. And you have the virtues dear to the noble ones, unbroken, unblemished, leading to concentration. After a wise lay follower who is sick, afflicted and gravely ill, has been consoled by a wise lay follower with these 4 consolations, he should be asked, "Are you anxious about your mother and father?" If he says, "I am," he should be told, "But good sir, you are subject to death. Whether you are anxious about your mother and father or not, you will die anyway. So please abandon your anxiety about your mother and father." If he says, "I have abandoned my anxiety about my mother and father," he should be asked, "Are you anxious about your wife and children?" If he says, "I am," he should be told, "But good sir, you are subject to death. Whether you are anxious about your wife and children or not, you will die anyway. So please abandon your anxiety about your wife and children." If he says, "I have abandoned my anxiety over my wife and children," he should be asked, "Are you anxious about the 5 chords of human sensual pleasure?" If he says, "I am," he should be told, "Celestial sensual pleasures, friend, are more excellent and sublime than human sensual pleasures. So please withdraw your mind from human sensual pleasures and resolve on the devas of the realm of the 4 great kings." If he says, "My mind has been withdrawn from human sensual pleasures and resolve on the devas of the realm of the 4 great kings," he should be told, "The Tavatimsa devas, friend, are more excellent and sublime than the devas of the realm of the 4 great kings. So please withdraw your mind from the devas of the realm of the 4 great kings and resolve on the Tavatimsa devas." If he says, "My mind has been withdrawn from the devas of the realm of the 4 great kings and resolved on the Tavatimsa devas," he should be told, "More excellent and sublime friend than the Tavatimsa devas are the Yama devas. Similarly, the Tusita devas, Nimanarati devas, Paranimita Vasavati devas. The Brahma world, friend, is more excellent and sublime than the Paranimita Vasavati devas. So please withdraw your mind from the Paranimita Vasavati devas and resolve on the Brahma world." If he says, "My mind has been withdrawn from the Paranimita Vasavati devas and resolved on the Brahma world," he should be told, "Even the Brahma world, friend, is impermanent, unstable, included in identity. So please withdraw your mind from the Brahma world and direct it to the cessation of identity." If he says, "My mind has been withdrawn from the Brahma world, I have directed my mind to the cessation of identity," then Mahanama, I say there is no difference between a lay follower who is thus liberated by mind and a monk who has been liberated by mind for 100 years. That is between one liberation and the other. That's the end of the sutta. So here, if the person dying is a good Buddhist who understands the Dhamma, then you remind him that he has these 4 factors of stream and tree. So he'll be happy. And then after that, you ask him whether he still has anxiety or attachment to the parents. And if he says he has, then you tell him to let go, because you're going to die anyway. You have to let go. So after he says he has let go, then you ask him to let go the wife and children, the direct family. Then after that, human sensual pleasures. And then after that, the heavens, one by one, until the Brahma heavens. And then after that, you advise him that even the Brahma world is impermanent, unstable, and to direct his mind to cessation of identity. That means to get rid of identity view, not to identify the self with the body and the mind. And if he's a wise Buddhist who has understood the Dhamma, perhaps he can do this and become liberated. But this type of advice you can only give somebody who has practiced the Dhamma for a long time. Otherwise, he won't be able to follow. A lot of people, when they are on their deathbed, they're so panicky and their mind is so disturbed. You cannot talk to them like that. They'll be seeing visions and frightened and all that. That's why I always say it takes many years to prepare for death. So that's the last sutta that I am going to read on this this chapter on the Sotapatti Samyutta. Now we come to the last chapter, 56th chapter, called the Sacca Samyutta. Sacca means the truths, meaning like the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha. So this chapter is about the Four Noble Truths, basically. The first sutta is 56.1. At Sotapatti, the Buddha said, monks, develop concentration, samadhi. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. I stop here for a moment. I see the Buddha in several suttas always says this, that you need to have a very concentrated mind to understand things as they really are, to see things as they really are. And what does he understand as it really is? He understands as it really is. This is suffering. He understands as it really is. This is the origin of suffering. He understands as it really is. This is the cessation of suffering. He understands as it really is. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. In other words, he understands the Four Noble Truths. Monks, develop concentration. A monk who is concentrated understands things as they really are. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the origin of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the cessation of suffering. An exertion should be made to understand this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. It's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, we should make an effort, we should make a strong effort to understand the Four Noble Truths. But if you have concentration, with a clear mind, it's much easier to understand. The next sutta, 56.2, the Buddha said, monks, make an exertion in seclusion. A monk who is secluded understands things as they really are. Stop here for a moment, you see. These two seem to come together quite often. Concentration and seclusion, the Buddha always encouraged these two things. Seclusion means being aloof, aloof from society, aloof from others. If you want to practice the holy path and make spiritual progress, you have no other choice. You have to cut yourself away from society. You have to give up your business, give up your attachments, and give up all the happy life, the night life, and all that. And because without all these sacrifices, your mind cannot calm down. If we are all attached to all the things of the world, you cannot calm down. Which reminds me, the other day we read one sutta. The Buddha said that without tranquility, that person suffers. A lot of us in this world, we are so busy with this, with that, all the worldly worries, that the mind cannot calm down. If your mind cannot calm down, there's a lot of suffering inside. Mental suffering. And what does he understand as it really is? He understands as it really is. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Monks, make an exertion in seclusion. A monk who is secluded understands things as they really are. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. It's the end of the sutta. So these two, concentration and seclusion, are very important in the holy path. 56.3, Buddha said, monks, whatever clansmen in the past rightly went forth from the household life into homelessness, all did so in order to make the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths as they really are. Whatever clansmen in the future will rightly go forth from the household life into homelessness, all will do so in order to make the breakthrough to the Four Noble Truths as they really are. Whatever clansmen at present have rightly gone forth from the household life into homelessness, all have done so in order to make the breakthrough to the Noble Truths as they really are. What for? The noble truth of suffering, the noble truth of the origin of suffering, the noble truth of the cessation of suffering, the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Whatever clansman rightly went forth will rightly go forth, have rightly gone forth from the household life into homelessness. All have done so in order to make the breakthrough to these four noble truths as they really are. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So the objective in going forth, in other words, to practice the holy path, is to walk the holy path, is to understand the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are the most important Dhamma in the Buddha's teachings, because if you understand the Four Noble Truths fully, you will be liberated fully. If you understand the Four Noble Truths partially, you will be liberated partially. You become an Arya. 56.7. Monks, do not think evil, unwholesome thoughts, that is, sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of harming. For what reason? These thoughts, monks, are unbeneficial, irrelevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and do not lead to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. When you think, monks, you should think, this is suffering. You should think, this is the origin of suffering. You should think, this is the cessation of suffering. You should think, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. For what reason? These thoughts, monks, are beneficial, relevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and lead to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Ordinary worldlings, ordinary people, their thoughts have these three ingredients: sensual thoughts, ill will or thoughts of anger, and thoughts of harming others. But one who practices the spiritual path, he should instead direct his thinking to the thoughts of the Four Noble Truths. Thoughts of the Dhamma. Thoughts of the Dhamma are lofty thoughts, higher thoughts. These ordinary unwholesome thoughts are base thoughts. Low thoughts will bring you to a low rebirth. High thoughts will bring you to a high rebirth. 56.10, the Buddha said, monks, do not engage in the various kinds of pointless talk. That is, talk about kings, thieves, and ministers of state. Talk about armies, dangers and wars. Talk about food, drink, garments and beds. Talk about garlands and scents. Talk about relations, vehicles, villages, towns, cities and countries. Talk about women and talk about heroes. Street talk and talk by the well. Talk beside the well. Talk about those departed in days gone by. Last time they talked by the well, and nowadays they talk in the kopitiam. Rambling chit-chat, speculation about the world and about the sea. Talk about becoming this or that. For what reason? Because, monks, this talk is unbeneficial, irrelevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and does not lead to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. When you talk, monks, you should talk about this is suffering. You should talk about this is the origin of suffering. You should talk about this is the cessation of suffering. You should talk about this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. For what reason? Because, monks, this talk is beneficial, relevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and leads to revulsion, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Therefore, monks, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the origin of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This first part, the description of the various types of what here is called pointless talk. Sometimes you can call it idle gossip. The Pali word is tirachana kata, which literally translates as animal talk. What we see in Cantonese, gong sam, gong sei. So this base talk, wasting time talk. So it's called animal talk because it's low talk, base talk. So then the Buddha said, I should talk Dhamma. In some other suttas, sometimes the Buddha comes across his monk disciples and he finds them chatting. He asks them, what are you talking about? And then when they say they talk about some worldly topic, and the Buddha said, when you come together, only two things you should do. One is either you keep the Aryan silence, shut up, don't talk. Or if you talk, talk about Dhamma.